In the high towers of corporate America, Bobby Walker thought he had it all figured out. Suited up, golf club in hand, house in the suburbs, 2 kids in private school, he was living the dream. His job as a senior executive at GTX, a large shipping conglomerate, came with all the trappings of success. A company car, business-class flights, and a 6-figure salary. To the outside world, Bobby was a winner, confident, ambitious, on the rise. But in an instant, all of that shattered. It started like any other day. Meetings, emails, boardroom talk, and then the blinds closed. HR stepped in. Bobby was being let go. No warning, no real explanation. Just a stack of severance papers and a handshake. "We appreciate your service." That's what they said. But the look in their eyes said it all. He was just a number. Another cost on a spreadsheet that needed trimming. Stunned, Bobby walked out into the parking lot, the cold wind cutting sharper than usual. He got into his Porsche, sat in silence, and stared out the windshield. The company he'd given 12 years to had cut him loose without a second thought. At home, the news didn't land any softer. His wife Maggie tried to stay strong, to be the voice of reason, but beneath the surface, both of them knew everything was about to change. Bobby tried to put on a brave face. He told his kids things were fine. He played golf like nothing had happened. He joked with friends. But as days turned into weeks, the reality of unemployment began to sink in. There were bills to pay, tuition, a mortgage, and suddenly that Porsche felt more like a burden than a badge of honor. At the outplacement center, Bobby joined a sea of former executives all looking for the same thing, a way back in. He met with a career counselor who gave him the usual advice: update your resume, network, stay positive. But Bobby didn't want to reinvent himself. He wanted his old life back. The meetings, the deadlines, the corner office. And the longer he waited for that call, the more desperate he became. Across town, another man was watching the layoffs unfold. Gene McClary, one of the founding members of GTX. Gene had spent decades building the company from the ground up. He still believed in loyalty, in leadership, in doing right by your people. But the new CEO, James Salinger, didn't see things that way. To Salinger, it was all about the bottom line: cutting costs, boosting the stock price, making shareholders happy. Gene tried to fight it. He argued in board meetings, pleaded with Salinger to reconsider the mass layoffs, but his words fell on deaf ears. The world had changed, and so had corporate America. Loyalty no longer meant anything. Gene, a man who once stood tall as a symbol of integrity, was slowly being edged out of the company he helped build, and watching good people get thrown away like yesterday's newspaper, it was eating him alive. One of those people was Phil Woodward, a middle-aged, mid-level manager who had worked at GTX since he was a teenager. Phil had risen through the ranks over 30 years, built a family, and carved out a modest but comfortable life. He believed in the system, in hard work, in earning your way. So when the axe finally fell on him too, it hit like a sucker punch. Phil's job was more than just a paycheck. It was his identity, his purpose. Without it, he felt like a ghost. He didn't tell his family the full truth at first. He pretended everything was fine, kept leaving the house in the morning like he still had somewhere to be. But behind the scenes, he was unraveling. The job market wasn't kind to men like him. Too old, too experienced, too expensive. And every rejection chipped away at his pride. Back in Bobby's world, the walls were closing in. The severance was running dry. They had to pull the kids out of private school, sell the Porsche, cancel the club membership. Even their home was on the chopping block. Maggie, who once stayed at home with the kids, took a job at her brother's medical office just to keep the lights on. And Bobby, still clinging to the hope of a big job offer, found himself in more and more interviews that ended in polite smiles and no callbacks. At one point, Bobby lands an interview with a rival company. It seems promising. He suits up, nails the meeting, and walks out feeling like he might finally be back on track. But days later, the rejection email lands in his inbox like a gut punch. And with every missed opportunity, Bobby's confidence takes another hit. The swagger that once defined him is gone. He's tired, lost, angry. As things spiral, Bobby's brother-in-law Jack offers him a construction job, manual labor, long hours, not exactly what Bobby trained for. At first, Bobby laughs it off. Him, swinging a hammer? No way. But desperation has a way of humbling a man. So eventually, he says yes. Waking up before dawn, loading lumber, sweating through work boots, none of it comes easy. His hands blister, his back aches. He's surrounded by guys who couldn't care less about corporate jargon. But slowly, Bobby starts to feel something he hadn't felt in months. Purpose, a sense of pride, the kind that doesn't come from a paycheck but from a day's work done right. Phil, meanwhile, continues to unravel. He goes on interviews where he's told he's overqualified or underexperienced for jobs he could do in his sleep. His savings dwindle. His marriage grows cold, and the shame, the silent, creeping shame, begins to consume him. He can't provide, can't protect. And one day, in a moment of unbearable despair, Phil takes his own life. The news hits Bobby and Jean like a freight train. Phil was one of the good ones, loyal, hard-working, and he died thinking he was worthless because the system deemed him disposable. Jean, filled with guilt and rage, confronts Salinger one final time. He tells him the company has lost its soul, that in the race to please shareholders, they've destroyed lives, but Salinger doesn't flinch. Business is business, he says. Jean resigns, walks away from the company he built with his own hands. It's a painful goodbye, but a necessary one. He knows he can't change GTX anymore, but maybe he can build something new, something better, with dignity, with heart. Months later, Jean reconnects with Bobby. He's starting a new venture, a small shipbuilding company that still values craftsmanship and community. He offers Bobby a position, not a big title, not a six-figure salary, but a chance to build again, to lead with integrity. Bobby takes it, not because he needs a job, but because he finally understands what matters. In that dusty shipyard surrounded by sawdust and steel, Bobby finds himself again. The man he used to be, the man he forgot in the high-rise offices and luxury boardrooms, he's still in there. And as he looks out across the water, hands rough, heart steady, he knows he's finally come home. The journey wasn't what he expected. It was messy, painful, full of loss. But it taught him something no MBA ever could, that success isn't about titles or toys. It's about resilience, about showing up, about who you are when everything else is stripped away. And in that, the company man reminds us all, behind every layoff, every pink slip, there's a human being, a father, a mother, a friend, and no bottom line is worth losing that.